The providence of God. We've seen the providence of God in our lives, I know. I've seen it so many times. And we see it in the lives of God's men and God's women in ages gone by, and we're studying about that right now in the book of Genesis. Let's go start again over on chapter 47 as we see Joseph down in Egypt. God provided a safety place for Israel during this 7 years of famine that was going to come upon the whole world. He sent down Joseph ahead of time to prepare a place for them. They went down there. They were related to the Hyksos kings of Egypt, and but they didn't like to do shepherding, and now they call them shepherd kings also. But now we have Israel down there going to do all the shepherding, and they're going to become a mighty nation in the land of Israel. But then a different dynasty takes over, and bad things happen, which we're going to come when we come to the book of Shemot, or the book of Exodus. Then Joseph went in and told Pharaoh and said, "My father and my brothers and their flocks and their herds and all that they have come out of the land of Canaan." What does the land of Canaan mean? What does Canaan mean, or Canaan? What's that? Yes. All right. Then Joseph went in to told Pharaoh that my father and my brothers and their flocks have come out, and they have come out of the land of Canaan, our possession. And behold, they are in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" And remember, we read this in the last class just a little bit. But what were their jobs? Were shepherds, but what were they also?
Warriors.
Warriors. They were tremendous warriors, the greatest warriors in the world at that time. This family whipped 10,000 Canaanites. And Jacob didn't like it. Jacob fought with them just like the rest of them. All of them fought like the valiant, like Achilles. Like Achilles. I'd like to read to you some one of these days from the book of Jasher, how that they just overcame the walls. They would just climb the walls and jump over the walls and go into the wall cities of the Canaanites and whip and kill all of them. Their names were famous, even in Egypt. So they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers." And they said to Pharaoh, "We have come to pilgrim in the land, to sojourn in the land, for there is no pasture for our flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan." I wish I could put out a video of a movie but Marion Cooper did in the Middle East in 1920-something, Following the Grass. Following the Grass. Mm-hmm. That is one of the greatest movies of these people. You couldn't believe how powerful these men were. You've heard about walking to school a foot deep in snow barefooted, haven't you? You've heard about that. That's a joke, kind of, sort of. These people, when they came up to these gigantic cliffs and mountains and driving their herds through, they take their shoes off and break up the snow and the pathway with their feet in the snow in the high altitude glacial mountains. They'd swim their animals across rivers with ice floating in them from the glaciers. Unbelievable, powerful. That's the kind of people that Jacob's sons were. Unbelievable, powerful men. We'll watch that movie one of these days together. "Now therefore please let your servants live in the land of Goshen." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is at your disposal. Settle your father and your brothers in the best of the land. Let them live in the land of Goshen. And if you know of any capable men among them, let them be put in charge of my livestock. Let them guard my sheep." Jacob was a good cowboy. He's a good sheep herder. He was a good warrior all of his life. It is said in the book of Jasher that Jacob, when he was old, even could pull a bow and shoot it further than any Canaanite, an arrow. He was a powerful man. They feared this family through all the land of Canaan and down into Arabia and all the way into Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How many years have you lived?" And we talked about this before, and Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my sojourning pilgrim are 130. Few and unpleasant have been the years of my life." And he did. He went to hell on earth, didn't he? "Nor have they attained the years that my fathers lived during the days of their pilgriming in this world." We're, by the way, we're only pilgrims in this world. We are not going to be total, solid, eternal residents in this world. We've got, I took you out to the cemetery the other day, Larry, and some of the oldest graves that we saw out there were 1870.
Yeah.
Only a few people know those men. Asa Wilds, I told you about Asa Wilds, how he went out there and he was a freighter. He had oxen, and I used to have some of the ox shoes off of his oxen. I've got, right outside the door there, I've got one of the axles off his Studebaker wagons. I've got two of the wagon tongues out there, the old blacksmith wagon tongues that the King bolts went through. He went up there and he was married to a Nez Perce Indian woman, and she would work just like a man, and they drove freight all the way from Lida up there, the old city of Lida, up there on the other side of Lida Pass toward Goldfield. They were up there, and he was gambling with these outlawish men, and he won all their money. And he had a lot of money. He was a freighter. He worked. These other guys were kind of gold miners and hijackers and highwaymen. And they came up over the pass, and they followed him slowly because, you know, an ox doesn't go very fast. And they're coming down the mountain there, and it's steep, and it takes days for them to get here. And he goes right out here by lake, by Fish Lake, out where his old stockyard was and everything for his cattle and livestock, where his freighting business was. And he stops there, and these guys, in the night, they begin to shoot at him and demand his money. I think he killed 6 of them. He shot and killed 6 of these outlaws, these highwaymen. But in the meanwhile, he was wounded and he died, and all of those men in 1870 are buried right there in the same graveyard with the little rock walls around them. I don't know how many people in Fish Lake Valley know that story. I can tell you another story down here at the south end of the valley. Harry was on this side, this part of the valley here, Fish Lake Valley, was the furthest extent of the western Shoshone tribe, and it went all the way down into Death Valley. That was all Shoshone land. But on the other side of Gilbert Pass is the Paiute land, and the chief over there was Harry. I'm telling you these stories because people live, die, and are forgotten. Harry, the cavalry was coming through here, and they were just shooting randomly every kind of animal there was, and there were a lot of antelope here, and we still see antelope. They were some of the largest antelope in the United States. Large, they're big, they're tall like this. Antelope are usually goats looking size. These are big. Horns that tall, some of them. Anyway, they were shooting these antelope and just letting them lay. Harry, as they were camping down there in Deep Springs Valley, he come up to them, he said, "We have a problem. You're killing our food." They laughed at him. He said, "You're killing our food. You kill our food, we starve, we kill you." So they went on through, they shot more antelope. They went on down to Camp Independence down there, Independence, California, right where the Indian casino is right now. And they went back, wherever they go, from here down to Las Vegas or wherever the other next was. And here comes another troop of soldiers, 224 of them. And they're shooting the antelope and the deer all the way as they're going through the land, target practicing with 45-70 sharp, or not sharp, but 45-70 what we call the trapdoor carbines, Springfield trapdoor carbines. This is about 1870 something. They had a bunch of new rifles, and some of them had been cut off and made into carbine because they didn't have enough carbine. I could show you one of them. I have one. Anyway, they began to shoot the soldiers on Gilbert Pass. They killed quite a few of them. They went over there to California City, where Crooked Creek and Wyman Creek go together in Maryland. I took and showed you that place, the old place where California City was. And they washed each other up and bound up their wounds and everything. They took off. They was going over Westgard Pass, and they got up there in the Narrows, and Harry and all of these men were up top of the Narrows raining down arrows and 45-70 rifles, because they took a whole bunch of 45-70 rifles over here. And 9 people made it to Fort Independence out of 224. Now, every one of those men had lives. Every one of those Indians had lives and children. But nearly all of them are forgotten. I don't know one name of any soldier. I'm sure it's written down someplace. I know about Harry. I know who he was. I know that he came back up here, and right up here at Upper McNett, he took and buried a whole bunch of those Springfield trapdoor rifles somewhere up there. Herschel Hansen ended up with one of them. These men are all come, lived, died, and are forgotten. Many of them lived hard lives, but their souls live forever. They live forever. Their souls go on. They'll be resurrected one of these days, and they'll stand on their feet either in heaven or hell forever. Jacob said, the years of my sojourning and pilgrim in this world are 130. Few and unpleasant have been the years of my life, and have attained the years. I have not attained the years of my father. Well, Noah lived what? How many years? 900 and some odd years. Abraham lived 175 years, I believe. You go back before the flood, and they were living almost a millennia. But after the flood, the world changed. We don't live so long. I've lived over 3/4 of a century. All of us in this room have. We're old people. But the life in this world is nothing. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. And so Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had ordered. You can go over there today and find where they lived. You can go over there and find where they lived as what we might call famous guests of Pharaoh, of Joseph and Pharaoh. And then you can find the places and the homes and the shacks they lived in when they were slaves. By the way, the family of Levi were not slaves like the others were they? What were the Levites? What is the occupation of the Levites? Gold and silversmiths. They're the ones that did all the fancy stuff. They weren't out there making bricks. They were out there being gold and silversmiths. And Joseph provided his father and all his brothers and all his father's household with food according to their little ones. There was no food in all the land because the famine was so severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph gathered all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. Basically, Joseph made Pharaoh the richest man in the world. What will you give when you're starving to death? Everything you got. I have been hungry. I know what it means to be hungry. I can't hardly stand to see an animal hungry or a child hungry or somebody hungry. It's really difficult. One of the most horrible things that I saw lately in my life was a man out there behind Bill Lee's restaurant in Bakersfield, California, and went out there and he was behind a Sequoia sandwich shop. And they came out and dumped the trash in there, and he got in there and he grabbed one of those sandwiches that was left over and was just scarfing it down, just starvingly. Starvingly. He was just eating as fast as he could. He was hungry. Because of the mess that's been caused into this country, we've got that all over in every city and every street in the whole nation because of the horrible lack of justice, the lack of law and order in our land. We see that. Well, they were starving in the land of Egypt also, in the land of Canaan. All of these were coming here from all over. There was no food in all the land because the famine was severe. So in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. Now, Joseph has stored in the big store cities there, had great big silos of all kinds of grain. Now the people lived on grain. Mm-hmm. Now, you go back there, you know that you can pick up a skeleton of a person, look at the skull, and you can tell whether he was rich or poor at this time. You know why? Because their teeth. Now the rich people got real good granaries and flour and all of that, and the poor man was eating grain with a lot of gravel in it, a lot of sand in it, and their teeth would wear out. You can tell what statue of life it was just how their teeth looked. And Joseph gathered all the money that was found in the land of Egypt, the land of Canaan, for the grain they brought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house, the richest man in the world at that time. And when the money was all spent, the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food, for why should we die in your presence, for our money is gone." Now they don't have any money. And Joseph said, "Give me your livestock, and I will give you food for your livestock, since your money is gone." Now he's going to take all of their wealth. The wealth is in livestock. When they measured Abraham's wealth, they said how many camels, how many goats, how many horses, how many whatever he had. Your wealth is in livestock. Livestock is valuable. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for the horses, and for the flocks, and for the herds, and the donkeys, and he fed them with food in exchange for all the livestock that year. All of their wealth is going into Pharaoh's house, Pharaoh's family. Now, the only people that weren't taxed in this land, and the only people that ended up with land in the land of Egypt, was the family of the priest which Joseph had married into. When the year was ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, we will not hide from my Lord that our money is all spent, and that our cattle are my Lord's. There is nothing left for my Lord except our bodies and our lands. Our bodies, slaves, they sold themselves sometimes. My great, so many times uncle, John Paul Jones, was sold into indenturement. He was sold as a slave into slave ships, and he became a captain, and he became the father of the American Navy also, John Paul Jones. Benjamin Franklin was an indentured slave. Andrew Johnson was an indentured slave. Did you know that? Andrew Johnson ran away, and so did Benjamin Franklin ran away. They were runaway slaves. There was a price on their heads. There were not only black slaves in America, there were white slaves in America. And there were white slaves many times more in the great industry lands and in the coal mine country in America. Slavery, slavery, slavery. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land. Buy us and our land for food, and we and our land will be slaves to Pharaoh. So give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land may not be desolate. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. And for every Egyptian sold his field, because the famine was severe upon them. Thus the land became Pharaoh's. No private property in the land of Egypt now. No private property. All of it is owned by Pharaoh. The whole economy of the world has changed now. As for the people, he removed them to the cities from one end of Egypt's border to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had an allotment from Pharaoh, and they lived off the allotment which Pharaoh gave to them, and therefore they did not sell their land. The priests of the sun god. Now Joseph said to the people, behold, I have bought for you and your land for Pharaoh, and now here is seed for you, that you may sow in the land. Now go sow this seed in the land. Now the land is all Pharaoh's now. He gives them food, and he's going to give them food. He's going to give them seed to sow in the land so they can become farmers. But they're all sharecroppers. They're all sharecroppers. Now I'm going to tell you something about sharecropping. Marilyn, when a man leases your land, how much of the profit off the land does he get?
It's supposed to be a quarter.
No. How much land does a sharecropper get? How much money does a sharecropper get? How much wealth off the land does he get?
Well, ours was a quarter.
No, they got 75%, you got a quarter. The landowner gets the quarter. Isn't that right?
It should be a half.
But the landowner all over, the sharecropper gets 75%, the landowner gets a quarter. So when you hear about all these poor sharecroppers, realize they're getting 75% of what's made. That's in our place in San Joaquin Valley, by the way. Now my family were working for the sharecroppers. I went out there and learned how to pick cotton, learned how to walk picking cotton, following a cotton sack in a cotton field. That's where I learned to walk, was in a cotton field. We were working for the sharecroppers. The sharecroppers were rich compared to us.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, they were. Then Joseph said to people, behold, I have today bought you and your land from Pharaoh, and here is seed for you, that you may sow in the land, and at harvest time you shall give a fifth to Pharaoh. 20%. 20% they're going to give to Pharaoh. So what were they getting? They were getting 80%. That's 20% tax now. Remember, the sharecroppers in San Joaquin Valley got 75%. And the landowner got 25%. They're doing a little better there than what Pharaoh was getting, but they were, and they didn't have to buy the seed either. And all 4 fish shall be your own for seed of the field, and for your food, and for those of your household, as for food in your little ones. They're all sharecroppers in the land of Egypt. So they said, you have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of the Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's slaves. And Joseph made it a statute concerning the land of Egypt, valid to this day, the writing of this book, by the way, that Pharaoh should have a fifth only. The land of the priests did not become Pharaoh's. Now, Israel lived in the land of Egypt and Goshen, and they acquired property in it, and were fruitful and became very numerous. They owned property. The Jews owned property at this time. The Israelites owned property at this time. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, so the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time of Israel came to to die drew near, he called his son Joseph and said to him, Please, if I found favor in your sight, place now your hand under my thigh and deal with me in kindness and faithfulness. Please do not bury me in Egypt. And again, when he placed his hand under the thigh, what did he do? He placed his hands on his genitals, because that was how that he procreated. And when they placed and swore upon their genitalia, they swore upon all the descendants of them. Now that's weird today, but that's what they did then. But when I lay down with my fathers, you will carry me out of Egypt and bury me in that burial place. Where's the burial place? In the land of Hebron today, and I've been there. That's something else. I've been in that area right there at the cave of Machpelah, where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are buried, and Leah and Sarah. And he said, I will do so as you have said. And he said, Swear to me. So he swore to him. Then Israel bowed in worship at the head of the bed. What a story, isn't it? What a story. This is the foundation of all the Bible, and the Bible is true. Now, we have modern day prophets out here that have no limitations. You know, they say, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and if it doesn't, and the Bible says now, if all this, if what they say doesn't 100% come true, what was supposed to happen to them? Kill them. Kill them. Now, these modern day prophets don't have that force of law over their head, so they can say and do whatever. If 50% or 60% or 20% of what they say comes through, oh yay! Yeah. The Bible said kill them. Modern day prophets are false prophets. The prophets of the Bible, the men who wrote the Bible, are true prophets of God. This is a true story. Our Father, we send this message out. I pray that you use it to show how you have watched over these men in this time, and that we, through many generations, have come to where we are, and probably we don't even know who our great-great-great-great-great-grandfathers were. But they lived and died, and all of them are accountable to you. And God, you watched over all of them in their lifetimes for thousands of years behind us. Father, please use your word to honor and glorify yourself and show the providence, your providence, and your love for your people throughout the ages. Please forgive me where I've failed you. In Jesus' name I pray.